psychologist, an adjunct faculty at Dista University, and I'm also a certified at conflict resolution. Yes.
Beautiful. Oh, wow. Welcome to the show. Welcome to this conversation. And also, you can just give us more like a foundation about why is it important for us to learn how to deal with grief and loss in families?
It is important, and let me just go a little bit back in terms of what you've just introduced as loss and grief. Loss being an aspect of being deprived of something, deprived of of a person, of a situation, or anything that has been taken away from you. And then grief being the reaction or the response an individual has towards that loss, towards that experience of losing something or someone. So why is it important then, and why is it significant? Loss is inevitable in all our individual lives. Every one of us is going to go through a loss, at whatever stage of life, in whatever capacity. So it is important to know how to negotiate or to navigate that process, the reactions that an individual may go through. How do you navigate that so that it doesn't impact on you? It doesn't impact on an individual. So knowing how to and being able to and being guided through the process of grief is important.
Wow,
Yeah.
beautiful.
And I think now the question that we may be asking ourselves, is there a healthy way of should I say, of grieving the loss of a family member?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is definitely a healthy way. And looking at it, there are, and like I've said, loss is inevitable. And loss may get an individual to a place where they're not able to cope. And a healthy way then will mean that this individual accepts this loss and is able to continue with their life thereafter, a meaningful life where their well-being is not impacted, where they do not experience a sense of impairment or dysfunction beyond and after the loss. So it is important then to have a healthy coping mechanism towards a loss.
And maybe getting down to that, just help us understand the stages of grief, from the moment of receiving that information to a point where one can say, I am healed and I have come to terms with what has just happened. What are the stages of grief that people experience?
All right. There are several models that have been used, and one of the main ones and commonly used one is the Kubler-Ross model of grieving, where an individual, first of all, may go through denial. You receive the news that someone has passed on, someone has died, and there's that aspect of denial. Denial would look differently for different people. It will mean that this person may be, I break the news to someone that their loved one has died, and they get into the car and drive off. That would be denial, where they don't want to accept the reality of this loss. Some faint. Some will insult you for, why are you bringing this news to forth that this person has died? So denial could be the first stage. And I say could because not everyone goes through these stages. The other one is anger, which what comes next is anger. Anger at this person who has died, anger at themselves, probably thinking that they could have done something different to avert this death or this loss. And then comes bargaining. Bargaining is where we see an individual wanting to even negotiate with God. If you bring them back, I will love them better. If you bring them back, then we'll finally do this and this and this and this. So that's bargaining. And then the next one will be depression. Sometimes individuals go through a period of depression, and that will be like intense sadness, aspects of isolating themselves, where they lose a sense of identity, they sleep a lot, they eat a lot or don't eat at all. So that would be depression. That one is very significant. That stage is very significant because you, as therapists, then we want to also look at aspects of what are the thoughts that this individual is carrying through. What are the distortions in terms of cognitive distortions that this person may be carrying through because of this loss. aspects of suicidality come in there too, where they are preoccupied with thoughts of death and dying and wanting to join this person who has left them, who has died. And then finally, it's acceptance. Acceptance meaning that you have assimilated the reality of this loss, that this person surely has died.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're feeling the sadness and the emotions that come with that loss, but you have also accepted, so you're not in denial. And all these stages are significant because, and especially if all the way from bargaining to depression to acceptance, you get to know that this person is no longer in denial, because denial is where we don't want our person to get stuck, or families to get stuck. Yes.
Yeah, and sticking to the same, realistically, this one of course may vary with different people. But how long should this persist? I'm talking about the timelines. Yeah.
So that's a good question, because ideally there isn't a normal period for grieving. Everyone grieves differently.
Yeah.
Grief is very personal. But from a clinical perspective, we look at the period because it's significant. Beyond 12 months after the loss, then it becomes complicated grief. Yeah. So there isn't a specific time frame.
Yeah.
But there are things to look out for, which may be of concern. But grief in itself is sometimes even a long life process. For example, if an individual loses, say, a child, which is not the normal, it's not the natural way of things. Say this child was maybe at around 6 years old, for example. By the time maybe this child is would have been 10 years or 13 years, there's that grieving still when your parent recognizes my child would have been. My child would have been going to Form 1. My child would have been going to the university at this point. So grieving is through and through. What we want to look at is the impact. It is living, the reactions and the intensity of those reactions across that time of mourning.
Wow. And maybe you can now touch on the importance of actually, I know we've read so many times that crying is therapeutic. And we have had instances where somebody just is not crying. They're just like that.
And cry.
Like men, like Gigi.
I don't cry.
Men cry out here, Gigi. You're the only one who unakaza siju unakaza. Yeah, but maybe you can talk about the importance of actually releasing those emotions. Is it healthy? Is it something that someone should actually allow themselves to process through?
Yeah. And you've brought out two things: the aspect of crying and the fact that men, the idea that men don't cry. Maybe we can look into that.
You need counseling, my brother.
You talk to Damaris. Yeah.
Yes.
Karibu.
On the house.
Yeah. Definitely. So crying is important. And I want to go back to what I said earlier. Grieving it's very personal. For some people, they will cry. For some people, will not cry. They will express it in other ways. But let's look at this aspect of crying. Crying is significant. And let me just bring on another aspect of the emotional tears that are released during a space of grieving. I know there are different types of tears. There are basal tears that we are producing right now to just lubricate our eyes. There are reflex tears, like how you tear when you're cutting onions. And then there are the emotional tears. And it's been said that those emotional tears, the chemical formation is very different. And that makes it very significant. That crying is very important. It gives the individual a form of catharsis to let out that emotional energy that they have, that has been placed on them because of the pain of losing something or someone. So crying is important. And it is important, if you find like someone crying, your friend crying, allow them to cry. Don't want to, tell them stop crying, be strong. Let them cry for as long as they want. Sometimes we give people permission to cry. And that brings on the other aspect of men do not cry. They are human beings, right?
Mhm.
And society and culture has brought on this thing of men should not cry. But it causes the male child or the men
Yeah.
to hold on to emotions that they should release. They should go through the motions of the pain. If those emotions are not released, there are somatic symptoms, like you experience physical symptoms, bodily symptoms,
Yeah.
it will impact them in several ways. But it is important to cry.
Mhm.
And if you find your friend crying, give them permission to cry.
Yeah.
Hold space for them.
Yeah.
The ministry of presence
Yeah.
comes into play
Yeah.
here.
Yes. Jesus cried too,
Yes.
Gigi.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jesus
Yeah.
cried.
He
Yeah.
Yeah.
When Lazarus died,
Yes.
Jesus actually cried before with all his power to resurrect
Yeah.
Lazarus. He
Yeah.
first cried and mourned and
Yeah.
grieved
Yeah.
his friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but partly you have mentioned it in as far as how people can be able to help others who are in mourning. So how do we help those who are going through this natural process of grieving? How do we
Yeah.
help them? Yeah.
There are several ways, even from a home setting, from a friend perspective, from a parent or a sibling perspective, that you can help someone who has gone through a loss. And one of the most significant things is to take a stance of not knowing, a not knowing stance. Don't assume my loss is your loss.
Yeah.
Want to understand, what does this loss mean to you? Before I start telling you pole, do you even want the pole? Maybe you're happy that you have lost that thing. Sometimes people are happy that they have lost something because it had negative impacts on them while it was existing. So you want to understand, what is the impact? How are you feeling, Beatrice, after this loss? Then I can come in knowing that you're feeling sad. And empathize and not take on the stance of, because I lost someone, the same person that you have lost. Say, for example, I lost a friend and you've lost a friend. I assume I know what you are going through, because of that similarity. No. I want to understand the relationship that you had with this person, what this person means to you. That's how we hold fort for the other person. So it's not taking a not knowing stance, wanting to know what this person needs. Ask them, what do you need from me right now? Do you need for me to sit with you? Do you need for me to leave you alone? And learning to respect that. So that's how we can support. Other ways we can support, like families who've lost loved ones, will be being there for them so that things are done. So if they are receiving guests, one of the things that happens when you experience, say, the loss of a loved one or any loss by extension, will be the lack of concentration, focus, short-term memory. So you want to be there helping them. African traditions are very good at this, because we go into someone's home, help make the tea, prepare the space for people to sit who will be coming in to say their sorries and their apologies to the family. Help in those, assist in such spaces. Ask them, what else do they need? Do they need someone to go to the shop? Do they need someone to send to a certain radio station? To the announcements, such things.
Yeah.
What do they need? That's how we can support, among many other things. Yeah.
But that's really important.
Yeah.
I mean, you've mentioned a very important thing about what do they actually need, because I think we come in thinking we have the answers
As
we
the
know
experts.
exactly what we need to do, but actually what worked for me may not work for other people. But with that, we're going to take a short break to sip some water, literally. But once we get back, we will continue. So you can also send in your questions, any concerns that you may have, so that we can talk more on this conversation. Tuko live pale YouTube, so you can definitely share this link with a friend who you feel may benefit from this conversation. We'll be back shortly.
I want to create this incredible hermeneutical hyperlink between Numbers 5 and John 7 and 8. In Numbers 5, there's this weird thing called the suspicion offering.